We've talked about writing strategies, and we have talked about speaking strategies, and today I'm thrilled and happy to bring with you the reading strategies that you need to be successful on IELTS. So you'll notice that today there's not a blackboard behind me or a whiteboard. We will be doing it a little bit differently. I have a chance to sit down. Usually teachers are standing, but I have a chance to sit down, and we're going to be looking at some of the strategies that will appear on your screen. And so I'm going to start by talking about whatever exam that you're doing, there's going to be 5 steps that you want to follow. And so let's look at the 5 steps that are recommended. I'll explain a bit about them, and then I'll give you some examples for that. So if we look at the top of the PDF, we see that it talks about the 5 steps for reading. And the first one that I always recommend is I see students often taking the exam and they start reading through the passage, through the long section. In my opinion, and what I've seen very successful students do, instead with step number 1 is they read the questions first. So they're looking for the information, they're identifying what are the key words. That means what are the nouns or the details. Is it asking about a time or about a place? They're also identifying what are the question types in the first section. Is it matching? Is it detail? Is it vocabulary, or fill in the blank? So this gives them an idea in their mind, which of the questions will I be reading through? What's the topic? Is it about history? Is it about a science or environment activity? So I read the questions first, and then step number 2, I want to do the easy questions. So sometimes students say to me, but all the questions are difficult. But I know that as you look at the different questions and you start to read through IELTS exams, there's always going to be 10 or 20% of the questions that are going to be easy, meaning they're detail questions. So they're looking at the name of a person, maybe a place, maybe a number. And so this information helps us to look and find that answer quickly using a strategy I'll explain in a couple of minutes, skimming and scanning. And then after answering the easy questions, then I can go to the more difficult questions. I often explain to students, from the time you were in kindergarten up until now, whenever you were in school, if you were given an exam or you were given exercises, usually you did question 1, then question 2, then question 3, and you continued down. When you're doing an IELTS exam, because of the time limit, you only have 60 minutes, 60 minutes, so you need to be more strategic. You need to look and say, okay, maybe number 1 is an easy question, I'll answer it. Oh, number 2, oh, that's a little bit difficult. Let's go to number 3. And so you're using strategies to help balance your time with the information and questions you can answer. Step number 3, don't spend too much time on one question. Often as I am observing students writing the exam, I look around the class and I see one student just looking very intently, very focused on one question. And maybe they're looking at it for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. Oh, I can't find it, I can't find it. That's okay. You want to focus on getting the most questions right. So if you find a question that's difficult, make a little mark next to it and come back. An example is when you have a section that is true, false, or not given. Well, if it's true, you find the sentence and you find in the paragraph the same number or the same time. Oh yeah, that's true. But when it's false or if it's not given, many times students are a little bit puzzled. So I often say, well then just put a mark next to those, go on to other easier questions, and then come back when you have a few minutes at the end of that section. Step number 4 is do the most right. Now, this sounds a little bit confusing. It's not good grammar, but what I'm emphasizing here is your exam is marked by how many you get right. You don't get marks taken away if you get some wrong. So you always want to answer the questions, and you want to choose the easy questions and do as many of those correct as you can. So typically in IELTS, the first section, the first passage, are easier types of questions, and then you go to the second passage, the third passage, and some exams have a fourth passage, depending on how the questions are divided. The last passage will be the most difficult and the longest to answer those sections. So you want to then go through the first sections more quickly so that you have more time for the later sections. And step number 5 is a little bit hard to do at once. So I always encourage students, focus on steps 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then after you've mastered those and you understand them, you're practicing them regularly. After about 2 weeks or a month of practicing these reading questions, then start to look at strategy 5. And this is where you look for 2 or 3 answers at one time. So for example, I see question 1 is about a date. I see question 2 is about a person. I go and I look for a time or a date. I look for a person's name. Then I go back and answer both those questions. Sometimes students say, oh, so this will make me twice as fast because I'm doing 2 questions at a time. Probably it won't, because you can't do it with all questions, but this will speed you up 5 or 7 or 8 minutes. And over the course of 1 hour, those 5 or 7 minutes, that means that you can take more time on 2 or 3 more difficult questions. And so it's these little things that may give you a difference between a 6 and a 6.5, or a 6.5 and a 7. So just getting a couple more questions right out of the 40 questions, that's what puts you into a higher bracket. So you're doing several strategies combined at the same time, and over 60 minutes, you see much better results. So let me explain a little bit more. How do you practice for the IELTS? Because most students I know, they have either go to a website or they have a book, and with the book, as they're looking through it, they just are practicing exam after exam after exam. That is not effective, because you don't know at the end, okay, well I got 26 out of 40, or I got 30 out of 40. Which did you get correct? Which did you not get correct? What's more effective is to break it down into strategies of how do you get faster and you identify information more quickly. Then we go and look at IELTS questions that are specific question types. So for the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to look at these in 2 parts. So first we're going to look at strategies that anyone can do anywhere that you are in the world, and this will help you start practicing your reading to become faster. Then we will look at specific IELTS question types. Are you ready? So let's look at the second half here. So with the 5 steps to reading, if we look at practicing and improving your time, first we talk about free reading. And so often in these videos, I've been with Dr. Samir, and he's helped many students he's directed them to websites where there's free reading practice that's online. And some of those are timed readings, and some of those are just reading for pleasure. But the more reading you're doing, especially if you're doing academics, so look at science topics or technology topics, just reading through 10, 15, 20 minutes every day through a passage or a newspaper, that will help you become more familiar. How is the grammar structured? What are those vocabulary? So taking time to do that is the foundation. Then we need to look at skimming and scanning. And you can see from the screen in front of you in letter B, this is helping you train your eye muscles. So just as in a sport, if I'm playing football, then I need to practice running, I need to practice kicking the ball, passing it to my teammates, shooting on the net. Just as I develop and work on those skills and I build the muscles in my legs and in my body, my lungs for running, I also want to skim and scan to train my eye muscles to pick out information. And so if I define it, skimming is when I'm reading through information quickly and I'm just looking at the title, maybe some of the first sentences in each section, just to get an understanding, what's the whole passage about? When I'm scanning, I'm reading quickly looking for specific details. So with scanning, this is where I look at numbers, names, and places. So 4 or 5 years ago, I was in Indonesia. I was with a group of high school students that would be taking IELTS within 1 month. It was my last day teaching them. And so I looked at the class and I said to the students, tomorrow I won't be here anymore. And of course, some of them were saying, oh, we'll miss you, we're sorry that you're going. And I was thinking, what can I give them that even though I'm not in the room, even though I'm not helping them with IELTS anymore, what can I give them that they will continue to practice? And I was looking around and I saw, oh, there's the Jakarta Post. It's an English newspaper in Indonesia. And I realized every country in the world has English newspapers or online articles that you can access. And so as I looked at the newspaper, and this is an example in front of me of a newspaper here in Canada, I was seeing there's numbers and there's names in almost every section. So what I encourage students to practice the skimming and scanning is to look at a newspaper article, look as fast as they can, even time yourself, circle the numbers, underline the names of people or places. And so let's say that I do a section that's in this article and this paper, just a short section. If I'm only looking at this and I time myself and I circle all the numbers and underline names of people and places, I do that in about 2 to 3 minutes. Then I say, okay, well, that's my time today. And then tomorrow, I'm going to beat that time. So every couple of days, probably 3 or 4 times a week, I'm looking through newspapers. Step 1, just circle the numbers and underline names of people and places. Then in week 2, then I start skimming, where I go back to the articles where I've circled numbers and underlined names of people or places, and I read the title, I read through the article a little bit quickly, and I just understand what's the main idea. So for those of you that say, well, I'm not in a class with you right now, Mr. Trevor, this is one example that you can be practicing anywhere in the world that you're at. So we want you to be free reading, and we can put some links underneath this post to help you with reading different levels. If your English is a little bit lower, there's online practice for that. If your English is a little bit higher, we can send you articles for that as well. You want to be skimming and scanning. Then you want to be looking at what we call logical thinking. And this is where I have questions where information is missing, and I need to fill in a couple of words at the end or a best ending. And so logical thinking is something that in, I'll say, the Western world, in North America, Britain, in Australia, we are often putting things almost like a mathematical formula. I know that this happened in the past, this is happening today, and I logically think what will happen tomorrow. Or this is a positive sentence, this is positive information, so the next sentence will be positive as well. So I'm looking for clues within the sentences. Is it talking about time? Is it talking about positive or negative? These types of information allows me to look very quickly through a section and then understand, because I've read the question first. Remember step 1 from our reading? I've read the question first, I'm looking through the section, oh, this paragraph is mostly positive and it's talking about this person. Then I look at the question, does this person's opinion, is it positive or negative? Well, because I've seen those clues without having to read every single word very slowly, I've just used skimming and scanning. I've used the logical thinking to put it together in order to match those, the answer with the question. And the fourth thing is reading faster exercises. So I'm going to give you examples of all of these, and but to what it is when I have a passage that I read and I write down, when did I start, when did I finish? Again, there are some websites online where you can do this yourself, so we will give that information to you at the bottom in the description or comments. But when you're timing yourself and you say, okay, today I read through 200 words, and you figure out how long it took you, let's say it took you 2 minutes, and you realize, okay, I'm reading 100 words in every minute. And over, not one day, but over 3 weeks, over 6 weeks, over 2 or 3 months, if I'm practicing this 2 or 3 times every week, you're going to see your reading speed increase, 100 words per minute, later on 120, 150. Most students that do this every week for 4 weeks or 5 weeks, their reading speed will double. And so that allows you, by practicing regularly, you're building those muscles, the eye muscles, the reading faster muscles, your logical thinking muscles. We are working together to build your reading comprehension and skill, and then you apply it to the IELTS questions and the IELTS passages. So let me look very quickly at examples. So let's go to the skimming and scanning example first. I'm just going to switch over here so that I can see it as well. So if you look on the screen, and we're just going to rotate this so that you don't have to be looking at it on the side. So if we look on the screen on the left-hand side, then there's questions on the top. And let me just go, when I right click, and then it rotates it a couple of times, and then so you'll have to go 2 more. So for those of you that are watching, we apologize because we have to, when I scan them in using the scanner, then sometimes they're right side, sometimes they're left side. So let's go to, perfect. So if we look on the left-hand section, we see there's some pictures of computers in the bottom left-hand side, and there above that there's questions, and in this case there's 6 questions. And so many times students say to me, but Mr. Trevor, this is not IELTS. Well, as I just explained previously, we're helping you build your skills. These types of exercise help your eye muscles to get faster, and then you apply those strategies to the exam and to the exam questions. So there's 6 questions. So what were my strategies? First you read the question. So I look at question 1, I identify the key words. So notebook computers, lowest price. Okay, so I'm looking for a number that's lowest. Question 2, the price of the computer with a 16-inch flat panel monitor. So I'm looking at 16-inch monitor, and then I'm finding what's the price of that computer. Question 3, what is the name of the computer store? So as I look through those, I then say, okay, in this case, they're all easier questions. I'm looking for names or numbers. So I would do these in order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The only exception is maybe, for example, question 4, I get confused. Different courses at the computer store, I don't know where to find the answer. I look through it, I can't find it within 30 or 40 seconds, maybe 1 minute. That's okay, then I just jump to question 5. I do question 6, then I come back to question 4. This is a start where you have a picture and you have questions. If you look on the right-hand side where it says scanning newspaper stories, that's similar to what I talked about with taking out a newspaper and looking for names and numbers. So in this case, on the right-hand side, it's exercise 6, and you see there's a narrow newspaper strip that's halfway down. So question 1, how many stores? So how many? I'm looking for a number. Number 2, which store did it start? Number 3, what time? So when I look through this, number 1 and 3 are going to be very easy. I'm looking for how many stores, a number, and what time. So because I've been practicing with newspapers to circle the numbers, I just scan through the newspaper column and I look for the number, how many stores were damaged. Well, in the title it says 14 stores damaged by fire. My keywords all match. I write down 14. I jump to the next question. Again, now some of you will say, but Mr. Trevor, you're a native English speaker. I'm not as fast as that. That's okay. That's the same as when I was teaching soccer. Here we say soccer, in many parts of the world we say football. But when I was teaching football to students, they would come to me and some of them were not very good at all. They were having difficulty kicking the ball, they were having difficulty passing the ball, so they would go to pass to their friend and it would go off in the wrong direction. What does it need? Well, they needed more practice and they needed some guidance by a coach. So I would show them how to pass, I would show them the part of their foot to kick from, and then they would practice that skill over and over. So that's where helping with skimming and scanning will help you grow as you do this, not in one day and not in one afternoon, but if you're doing it 3 or 4 times a week, for example, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, and you take 10 to 15 minutes on those days just for skimming and scanning, that's how you will get faster. Let's look at a second strategy that I talked about. So we're going to look at the reading faster questions. So you see at the top it says Unit 1, the Diamond Family, and Passage 1, Susan and Sam. So here, this is where you'll notice beside Passage 1, Susan and Sam, it says starting time, and then further down there's 4 paragraphs, and then it says finishing time. And so with this type of exercise, you would write down when you start, you read through the passage, trying to understand as much as you can. Then you put down your time. For many students, well, it's a range. There's no comparison with other students. For one student, it might take them 2 minutes. For another student, it might take them 3 minutes and 20 seconds or 3 minutes and 45 seconds. It does not matter to me what you start with. What I want to look at is over several weeks of doing this regularly, are you increasing in your speed? So I can do this with 12 or 15 students in a classroom, each of them with their own speed, but I watch them get faster because they're not competing with their friend or their person sitting next to them. They're looking at where am I at today and how fast do I read, and then how do I practice in 2 weeks, in 1 month, in 2 months. Once you've written down the time for that passage, then if you go to the next page, there's 8 questions. And so, sorry, this is just on page 2 of the Reading Faster. Yeah, so if we just go down to page 2. So those questions are related to the passage, but here's something that's very important. You want to answer these questions without looking back at the passage. And the reason for this is I want to be building 2 skills with you. One is to read faster, but second, to be helping your mind to remember information. And when you've done 10 of these, 20 of these, 30 of these, your mind is going to start recognizing, even as you're reading, oh, this is mentioned twice, it's going to be a question asked, or this is important details, or oh, this is the first sentence in the new paragraph, this is the main idea. There'll probably be a question about the main idea. So by doing this step by step over several weeks, your mind is being trained to remember more, you're reading faster, and you're able to start identifying what might questions be asked on as you go through this. The last part in this section will just be taking a look at a logical thinking question. So let's flip over to the logical thinking section. Again, you might have to change it to make it on the side. And let me just rotate my view for mine as well. So on the left-hand column again, it shows exercise 9, questions 1 to 5. And then on the right-hand column, it says exercise 10, numbers 1 to 5. So let's look at exercise 9. Let me read through this. The Marais is a nice neighborhood to visit in Paris. It doesn't have big museums and fancy shops. It's quiet, old neighborhood with nice buildings and I have 4 choices. A beautiful park, dirty streets, too many cars, a big supermarket. So if I'm paying attention to the adjectives, I go back to the sentences, it says nice neighborhood, not big museums, quiet, old, nice buildings. These are all positive adjectives. And so when I look at my answer choices, dirty streets, no, that's negative. Too many cars, no, that's negative. A big supermarket, well, no, it doesn't have big museums or fancy shops. But a beautiful park, that's positive, and it fits in with an old, quiet neighborhood. So when you first start doing these exercises, you will read through the sentences. But as you practice them, you're going to start, because of your skimming and scanning skills and because you're looking at different words, you're going to get faster, because I could also look at it and just glance. Nice neighborhood, not big museums, quiet, old neighborhood, nice buildings, oh, beautiful park. Dirty streets, too many cars, no. A big supermarket, no. So in my mind, I'm going more quickly through this because I'm picking out key words. It's a strategy that you learn. Let's look at number 2. You can tell a horse's age by looking at its teeth. You learn about its health by looking at its eyes. Okay, so we have teeth, we have eyes. But so before you buy a horse, look carefully at its chest, feet, tail, or head. Well, where are your eyes and your teeth? They're in your head. And so by looking, I'm making the conclusion, oh, I look at the eyes, I look at the teeth, so we look at the horse's head. Let's look at one more on this section. Summer sports are popular even in northern countries with short summers. So it talks about summer sports, and it mentions summer a second time in that sentence. For example, in Sweden, sailing is an important national sport. So is ice skating. Well, sometimes people choose this because they, oh, ice skating, yeah, it's northern country. But it was emphasizing summer and summer sports. So ice skating is done in the winter, not in the summer. Tennis, okay, that's done in the summer. Cooking is not a sport. Skiing, oh, well, skiing is done in the winter, not the summer. My focus is on summer because I have key words, it's mentioned several times. I need to choose B, tennis. Okay. So these are a very quick glimpse. Obviously in our 30 or 40 minutes we don't have time to go into many details, but this looks very quickly. What are some different types of strategies and what are some practices you can be doing just to build your English skills before you move to the general IELTS exam or for the academic IELTS exam? And online, again, there's many practices, both at a basic level or a more advanced level. And if you have a coach helping you with keeping track of your time, encouraging you and helping match or monitor as you answer these questions, then you'll start to see progress and you'll feel more confident. So that's the first section of strategies of just helping and build your reading skills. I'll spend a few minutes now looking at what are specific types of IELTS reading questions. So let's look at the last PDF here about main question types. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. This is where you need to be in a classroom with an IELTS teacher to go into more depth of understanding what are the different question types. Today I'm just introducing, here's what the main questions are so that you're familiar with that. And I've written down several steps for each section here. So when I look at the first category, it says close, C-L-O-Z-E, with it's been bold and it's underlined. Close means fill in the blank. It's an academic term, so I made this original PDF I made up for my academic IELTS students. If I was giving this to general IELTS students, I would just change that word fill in the blank. So when I'm looking at a passage and there's words missing in some sentences, what are the steps that I do? Well, students usually look at it, they fill in a couple that they know, then they'd leave the rest blank and they go on to the next question. So what I encourage is looking at steps 3, 4, 5 in the middle so that we start to get more answers correct. So read the words and the sentences, identify what's missing. So this requires a little bit of grammar. You need to be looking, is there a noun, is it a verb, is it an article, or the before a word? And so you do need to have a little bit of grammar knowledge, and maybe some of them you'll get right and some you'll get wrong. That's okay. Second, with IELTS, they sometimes have a paragraph in the passage, and then they have questions with a few blanks. So if it's that format, then I need to look through, well, for example, if it's talking about fish, and so I need to look through, okay, these sentences are talking about fish. Where in the passage does it talk about fish? Oh, okay, it's in paragraph 3. And then I read through that paragraph carefully, and then I look which words are missing from there. I fill in the blanks that I can find based on that. I look at some of the remaining words. Okay, well, I see, well, there's a verb here, and there's a verb here. So I have 2 verbs. I need a verb in this sentence. So now at least I know it's one of these 2 verbs. Usually at this point, most students just get confused and they quit. They say, okay, I'm just going to guess and move on. But I can start narrowing down my choices. So I look, okay, well, at least I know it's this verb or this verb. And then I can read through the question silently. Okay, if this word is in it, how does that sound? If this word is in it, how does that sound? If I still don't know, I at least fill in all of the answers, because there's no penalty for getting a wrong answer. I eliminate if it's a wrong answer, and I just guess at the rest and I move on. So that's one type of question, fill in the blank. Matching questions, often you have a passage and they have paragraphs with letters before them, A, B, C, D, E. Then I have phrases or short sentences with numbers 1 to 8 or 1 to 10, and they say which of these short sentences matches with which paragraph. So with this, I want to read the first sentence of each paragraph just to get an idea. This is my skimming that we practiced over the weeks before. What is the topic about? I look at the different short sentences and I see, does this whole sentence, every word in that short sentence, does it match with what's in the first or second sentence of this paragraph? If all of the words match 100%, great. I can just match them together and go to the next question. If they don't match all of the words, then I have to take more time and I need to read through that passage, all the paragraphs, and then I need to see which of these can I match. And usually as I do this over 7 or 10 minutes, I come up and I still have these 3 sections, I still have these 2 paragraphs, then I just need to guess and move on. But at least I've narrowed and not guessed right from the very start. I've taken time to read through each section. True, false, not given. This is where you have questions with, this is saying, for example, did Canada become a country in 1862? That's your question. Did Canada become a country in 1862? So as I'm reading through, I'm looking for a date, because it shows me a number, 1862, and as I read through, it says, oh, Canada became a country in 1867. So then I look, 1862, 1867, no, this is false, because those dates don't match. Or if it said Canada became a country in 1867, Canada became a country in 1867, I choose true, because those match. Those are easier for students. What's tricky or more difficult is when it says not given. So if you look as we go through here, if I look at step 4, if your keywords are not all matching, so usually there's 2 or 3 keywords in the question, there's 2 or 3 keywords in the passage. If they don't all match exactly, then I'm going to choose not given, because that means that all of the information is not given to me. It's missing from the passage. I want to make sure I'm watching my time. So again, these are where these are more difficult questions. I may refer and do my fill in the blank questions or detail questions about time and numbers first, and then I do these questions at towards the end of the exam. And then if I still don't know at the very end, I'm not sure if it's false or not given, just guess and move on, because you only want to spend about 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes per question, or faster. Okay, I know some of this is just talking, so I'll go a little bit quicker through the next 2 parts. Multiple choice, I think this is what most students are familiar with. All around the world, when we're in school or university, we have multiple choice. We have 3 or 4 answers, and we have to decide which of these is the correct one. Well, if you go back to the logical thinking skills where I had A, B, C, or D, you were watching me as I eliminated some wrong answers, and I was saying which of these, because of these keywords, which choice fits with those keywords, positive, negative, summer sports versus winter sports, etc. So with these steps, I identify the keywords in the question, I look at my choices, A, B, C, or D. I try to match if there's keywords from the passage that would match with one of those choices. If I have and I see this is an obvious wrong answer because it's not matching, I eliminate it. I then choose from the answers that are left. And again, if I'm still not sure, I just guess and move on, or I make a little question mark. I come back to it before the end of the exam. And the last is just the extended answers. This is similar to fill in the blank, because sometimes they ask you no more than 2 words, sometimes they ask you no more than 3 words or 4 words. So in this section, I'm using similar to fill in the blank, but I'm identifying the key words. I'm seeing what phrase is missing, so not an individual word, but 2 or 3 words, and then I'm putting those words. Sometimes I need to change them slightly, but I'm putting those into the passage. If you notice with all of these steps, guessing is at the end. There are strategies you can learn, and you also want to always balance your time. So if you find that I only have 2 minutes left in the exam and I still have 5 questions, yes, then you'll need to guess because I don't have enough time to read every question. but try to answer the easier questions correct as you go through, and that'll give you more confidence. And then as you move to the harder questions, make sure you're using some of these strategies of eliminating wrong answers, understanding what to look for with different question types, and practicing that week by week will help you move forward and become faster and more accurate with your IELTS exam. Let me just end with one story. I have a sister who's 4 years older than I am, and in high school, she was excellent with English literature. So when she was going through school, all the teachers praised her. Her writing was beautiful, the flowery, very neat and easy to read. Her information, her vocabulary, her marks were always in the 90s, 95s. So as she went through high school and did poetry and literature and Shakespeare and anything to do with the English language, she was always getting very high marks. Well, 4 years later, I came through those same classes with the same teachers. I was not great at English when I was in high school. So this is a little secret, don't tell everyone. But I was not that great at English when I was in high school. And so I had to compensate. I had to learn strategies to get better when I was doing these, doing the different exams, when I was writing essays, when I was doing research papers. I did get better in my English, alhamdulillah, through lots of practice, and I was able to move forward in university, and then as I pursued my master's, I had to get better. So learning grammar, learning the structure, learning the organization. But it was a process, and it was strategies. So if we look at today, and my sister and I would each take an IELTS exam, I would finish the exam faster, and I would have more accuracy. I would get a higher mark than she would. And I'm not saying that in boasting, but I'm saying that to encourage you. When you're doing IELTS, it's not because, oh, that person gets a really high mark because they're a native speaker, or they've been in America, or they've traveled to Dubai or different areas where they've been practicing more English. No, the difference will be, and this is something that you can work on, the strategies and the time you spend under the guidance of a coach to move forward, those things will help you to get a higher mark on IELTS. And so you can do this. This is not something that, oh, well, my neighbor was lucky because, you know, he attended a private school, or my friend did really well, but his parents were always helping him with his English as he was growing up. No, these are strategies that you can do and be successful on your IELTS exam, whether it's for immigration purposes or for the academic purposes. But it does take time, and that's why I always say to students, don't come and ask me 2 days or 1 week before your exam. It's going to be hard for me to help build up your reading strategies. You need to be taking time, usually about 1 month to 2 months minimum. That's where you see progress in these strategies and understanding. Typically, though, I see that it's 3 to 6 months of focused practice for students to do well in the reading section. So please let me know if there's other questions that you have. We will post some of these links and websites in the comments and the description below. And I look forward to sharing with you as we move forward. Probably what I'm guessing or hoping for is that we will look at an actual IELTS questions, and we'll look at how do these strategies I've talked about, how do they apply in the real world? It's not just theory, but how do we take these strategies, we look at an IELTS exam, and we go through different sections for that, and we start to see strategies and see them at work, which will give you encouragement. So thank you for tuning in and watching as we went through this. If there's questions, I do want you to ask me and to be in touch with us.
Do you have any questions?